Hello, hello. Welcome to Verbling again. I'm Teacher Oakley, and today we're going to conclude our three-part series at this time this week by looking at the future perfect tense. We've looked at present and past. Today, it's back to the future. We go in a perfect fashion, no less. Okay, we are going to be looking at the forms, plural. There are two forms, and discussing the uses and some special circumstances we must take into regard when we're talking about future tenses and when we're talking about future perfect tense. You, the students, will be after we look at the use and I discuss it a little and show you some examples, you guys will form some sentences and we'll talk about them. Okie doke. Hello, Igor. How are you?
Hello, teacher. I'm alright. How are you?
You're alive. Yeah, I'm still clawing through the. I'm still clawing through life myself. Yeah, I'm okay. I'm okay. I've had a cold for like I don't know. It's going on 2 weeks. I've resolved myself to the fact that I will have a cold for the rest of my life. But other than that,
I understand you. Same thing.
yeah. A lot of my students have colds as well. Something, as we say in English, something going around, but it's a weird thing to say here on Verbling because that means something's going around the Earth, the planet Earth. There's some kind of cold going around. Okay. Let's see. Julio has joined us. Hello, Julio. How are you? Julio? Hi there. Hey. Okay. When you get situated, just give me a shout out. Say hello. And Heidi is with us. Maybe Julio come back. Heidi, hi.
My connection is very slow. I couldn't enter this place for 1 minute or 2 minutes. Only road.
Yeah, I understand. Well, that happens. That does happen. Yeah. Anyway, you guys are here. Hopefully some others will join us. Maybe Julio will come back. Let's get started looking at future perfect tense. Okay. First thing to note, it actually has two different forms, and they look kind of like this: will have done and be going to have done. Ooh. All right. Okay, unlike simple future forms, thank goodness, future perfect forms are interchangeable. It really doesn't matter which one we use. It's a matter of personal preference for the speaker or the writer. You can use either one. In future continuous or future perfect continuous, it doesn't really make a difference. There's these two different forms, one with going to and one with will. In simple future forms, it can make a difference. In some cases, it makes no difference. When you're making predictions in future simple forms, it makes no difference. However, we use the going to form to talk about plans, usually in the future, simple future, and we use the will form to talk about offers or to ask someone, will you do this for me? We don't usually say, are you going to do this for me? Okay. To ask for something or to make offers or to volunteer, we usually use will. So it's little different uses for simple future forms. Today we're talking about future perfect, so no worries. We don't have to concern ourselves with that kind of problem. All right, the actual forms now. With will, it is formed with will, the auxiliary or helper verb will, plus have, and then the past participle form of the main verb in the sentence. So, for example, you, subject noun, will have perfected your the verb form. Your English, here we have an object, noun, by the time you come back from the U.S. Okay, notice the addition of the time clause here. This will be important later. In the question form, as always, we're going to use the first auxiliary first. As the first word in the sentence, we transpose or reverse it with the subject noun, whatever that subject noun may be. Will you, and then the rest of the verb form, have perfected. Again, your English by the time you come back from the U.S. And in the negative form, the subject goes first. Will not have perfected. Notice placement of the negative not is behind the first auxiliary or helper verb. Again, will have are auxiliaries. They help the verb, and perfected is the main verb. So you will not have perfected your English. Blah, blah, blah. Now, of course, will not, commonly in spoken English, when really native speakers just basically just don't ever say will not. We're, of course, going to use the contracted form, and we're going to say won't. You won't have perfected your English by the time you come back from the U.S. Like that. There is a second form for the future perfect, which, of course, is a lot more wordy. All right. And the form is going to look something like this. The verb to be, dependent on if you're speaking in first, second, third person, I am, he, she, or it is, they, we, or you are. Okay, this depends on the subject. We have to conjugate our verb to be dependent on the subject noun. And then the entire construction, now this never changes, okay, going to have. And then finally, our main verb, our past participle verb. So there it is. It looks like this in a sentence. You, subject noun, and then our entire verb construction in a positive statement are going to have perfected your English by the time you come back from the U.S. Now there is, again, I repeat, there's no difference between this sentence and this sentence. You will have perfected your English by the time you come back from the U.S. It makes no difference at all. Doesn't change any meaning. There's no implications or subtle changes in the meaning. Okay, question form, again, taking our first auxiliary, which is going to be our verb to be, and transposing it, reversing it with the subject noun. Are you? Then the rest of our verb construction, going to have perfected, blah, 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 your English by the time you come back from the U.S. All right. In negative form, again, that first auxiliary is important when it comes to question forms and negative forms. Not just for future perfect, but for all verb tenses. The negative is going to follow the first auxiliary. And again, here we commonly contract the auxiliary and not. So it would probably be aren't. Whoops. Aren't. You aren't going to have perfected your English by the time you come back from the US in spoken English. We definitely are going to tend to basically always use the contracted form. Not necessarily so in writing. In writing, especially very formal writing, academic or business writing, you should use full form, generally speaking. Okay. Let's get to some uses. Okay, Julio, are you here? I mean, I know you're here, but are you mic'd up?
I'm all mic'd up, don't worry.
You're all mic'd up. All right. Okay. What is your question here? You are going to have perfected. Is that ever used?
I mean, in the contracted form. You're gonna.
Oh. No. You're gonna have no, because, and here's why. I have a logical explanation for that. I can actually answer that question. You're gonna, yes. That contracted form would be normal. Gonna, G-O-N-N-A, gonna, instead of going to. Yes, that would be common. But I can't contract VE simply because gonna ends with a vowel, the A. All right. To connect sounds in English, we alternate vowels and consonants, vowels and consonants, vowels and consonants. That's the whole idea. To shorten, really, actually abbreviate our speaking for function words. So actually, this is very normal because you have so many freaking function words here. All of this is are function words. You are going to have, it's all function words. So yes, it would be very common to contract or reduce. Contract you are, reduce going to, but have here would actually, you would actually pronounce the H. Simply because that's the easiest way to join it, alternating vowel, consonant. You should have. Should have, okay, we're using modals, that might change. You should have done it. Sounds like shoulda done it because of the D in done. So have gets reduced to simply a schwa sound. You should done it. But we would use should have if the next sound is a vowel. Should have arrived. He should have arrived by now. The whole secret with these reducing, it's a good question. It's a very valid question here because we've got like multiple auxiliary or helper verbs which in spoken English get reduced. The whole secret with these reductions is we're reducing them so that we can continue speaking without a pause, without a break, by alternating vowel consonant, vowel consonant, vowel consonant, like that. Okay. But as far as context, again, no difference. Vowel is not. When we have vowel, Igor, we use a glide. We use a Y sound or a W sound. If I say, oh, go on. Oh, please. You're crazy. Go on. Go on. I bridge the two O's in go and on with a W. Go on. So, yeah. Yep, we figure out another way to do it. We add a consonant that's not even really there when we want to bridge two vowels. Okay, anyway, we're getting a little sidetracked. That's it is definitely related to this lesson, so it's worth looking at. But let's get back to Future Perfect. And let me welcome Alexander. Hello. Alexander, how are you today? Alexander, I can see that you're not muted, but I can't hear you, brother. Sorry. You may have to adjust your settings or leave and come back. I can't hear you at this time. All right, so hopefully you can fix that. Moam, hello, how are you? Moam? Hello.
Hopefully,
Hi there. How's it going?
I'm doing. Yeah, it's good.
Okay. Terrific.
How
I'm okay, all things considered. Okay, I'm gonna proceed now and look at use number 1. Let me get my screen share back up here. Okay, how do we use this future perfect verb tense? Use number 1, and definitely the most common usage. I completed action before something in the past. So, visualizing with a little diagram here. The future perfect expresses the idea that something will occur before another action in the future. So the future perfect here is represented by this purple circle thing here in the diagram. And the other action in the future is represented by this purple X. It can also this purple X can also be representative of a specific time in the future. January 2018, for example, a specific time. Okay, to make it clearer, let's look at some examples. By next November, purple X, next November, I will have received my promotion. You hope. So this promotion will have happened before the purple X, which is next November. All right, here's the circles his promotion. The X is November. That's the basic idea. Okay, that's with a time. That can be considered a specific time. Here's another example with an action. By the time he gets home, she is going to have cleaned the entire house. Okay, by the time he gets home, purple X. She is going to have cleaned the entire house. Okay. Now, notice that our purple circle is within the confines of a sort of orange oval here. Okay. She's going to have cleaned the entire house. We don't really know exactly when she will have done that. Is it slightly in the past compared to the present, this moment, exactly now? Is it slightly forward? It can be anywhere in time, just as long as it's done and finished and over by the time Mr. Purple X comes home from work. He gets home, okay, it's going to be done. That's the concept. We don't know how long it's going to take her, how long. When she starts, when she finishes, we don't know. All we know for sure is that she's going to have that gosh darn house clean by the time he gets home. That's the idea. Negative form. Here's a negative example. I'm not going to have finished this test by 3 o'clock. Okay, here we have obviously a specific time, 3 o'clock. Okay, notice we don't have a contraction for am not, so I would contract I'm not. And please don't say I ate. I ain't gonna have finished it. Okay, that's just considered rather gauche and bad grammar. There is an existing contraction, but is considered to be bad grammar. So here, going back to our discussion about pronunciation, this would be I'm not. Okay. And in the question form, will she have learned enough Chinese to communicate before she moves to Beijing? Notice that we're in the future perfect, much like past perfect yesterday, notice that we're always using at least a time clause and then another independent clause, or a dependent or subordinate clause and an independent simple sentence or independent clause, often connected by, or perhaps before, by the time. Okay, a lot of times we use by the time. This is very common, future perfect. And notice one other thing you may have noticed as we're looking at these examples, the italicized verbs. What do they have in common? The purple, they're all the purple X in our diagram. In addition to that, they're all what? They're all simple present tense. Gets, he gets, she moves, he leaves, I finish. By the time I finish this course, I will have taken 10 tests. Okay. There's a reason for that. That's because when we start clauses with expressions like by the time or before or after or when or while or during, these are time clauses. And guess what? It is always impossible to use a future tense in a time clause, which begins with a time subordinator, like, when, while, by the time. And that is not just true for future perfect, that is true for all future tenses. You cannot use any future tense in the with a time clause. Okay, Igor, you're asking what about future in the past? Would this work? He thought he would have brought order by the end of his reign. Yeah, well, yes, that is a perfectly correct sentence there. Yeah, there's no problem with that. He would have brought. That's perfectly fine. Future in the past, yeah, kind of complicates things a lot. You got to deal with modals and yeah. Anyway, let's stick with this. Before I start adding more and more and more information and complicating things, let's try this out. Okay, again, a completed action before something in the future. Using the examples that we've been looking at. Igor, can you give me a sentence with future perfect verb tense, please?
I will have come up with an example by the time you ask me to do so.
Very clever. That's very good. Okay. I will have come up with an example. This is perfect, grammatically perfectly correct. I will have come up with an example by the time you ask me to do so. Okay, the time clause has simple present tense. He has have, will, have, and the verb here, he's used a phrasal verb. Actually, he's used a 3-word phrasal verb. I just noticed that. Terrific. Come up with means thought of. Okay, it allows me to illustrate the point that all phrasal verbs, most phrasal verbs are 2 words. Here's a 3-word phrasal verb. Nonetheless, they can be used with any verb tense. Phrasal verbs can be used just like any other normal verb and can be used in any verb tense. And here's a perfect example. Okay, terrific.
May I ask a question?
Yeah.
My contract this I will have like I will have come up. I will have come up.
I love. I love. It sounds like I love. Yeah, actually, that would be very normal. Yes.
I
It's
see.
a
Thank you.
strong yes to that. I love. Come up with an example. By the time you ask me, yeah, you ask me. No, here you ask because of the A in ask. Hello, newbie. Come on in and join us. Okay, Heidi, your turn. Give it a try.
Okay, they will not have constructed the
Oops.
railway for linear motor train.
They will not have constructed the what?
Railway.
Thank you.
For linear motor train.
Linear?
Linear, yes. Like liner, no,
Oh.
linear.
Okay.
Yeah, linear motor train. By the time Tokyo holds Olympic game.
Okay. Well, we've got the verb construction down, Heidi. That's fine. But we've got a little problem with, well, okay. They will not have constructed a railway. So far, so good. For linear motor train, I assume these are plural, trains.
Trains.
Yeah. Okay, so when we're talking about something in general that is countable, we need to, I love cats. I can't say I love cat. If I say I love cat, it has a different meaning. It means I like to eat cats. Because I mean the concept of cat. Be careful of that, by the way. I love cats. That's a wonderful thing. Meow, meow, pet the kitty. I love cat means I like to stick it on a stick and barbecue it. Quite different meaning. Okay. By the time Tokyo holds Olympic, okay, here we absolutely
Games.
the
I see.
the Olympic Games. Yeah, and you're right. You do need an S because these are quite specific. We all know exactly what this is, so we do need an article. Okay, but as far as verb construction, great. Again, we've got our time clause with a present, simple present tense, and it's very practical, straightforward. This is how future perfect works, and this is a very good example of how it can be useful in English. So, good job.
A question, if I may. Might be a silly one, but with this construction, by the time something happens, can I just say when this happens?
Okay, you mean instead of by the time, can you substitute when?
Yeah.
It sounds a little weird because when, the concept of when itself is used to introduce an exact action, which is why, like when we use continuous tenses, I was watching a movie when the phone rang. The idea being, bam, like that, the phone rang. So.
Yeah, I see. But what about if you say when you have done something? Like a completed action by this time? Like in my example, I will have come up with an example when you have asked me to do something.
Like by the time I have finished my cafe, I will have already studied. By the time I have finished my cafe, I would have already studied.
I would have already studied. Oh, now you're getting into modals. Okay, hold your question. Well, can you hold that? Write it down or something so you don't forget. Let me try one at a time here. Okay, like your example, can I use when, basically. I will have come up with an example when you ask me to do so. That sounds very weird. How can I use it when you ask me to do so? I will be ready with an example when you ask me to give one. I could reconstruct the sentence entirely to make it make sense. But as it's
my question initially, sorry.
Yeah.
Like, you know, I know that when is something that just happens, you know. So
right.
Well, but when you say by the time, it's like you're introducing a completed action, you know. That's why it's okay to use perfect tense there. I understand that. But what if after when we also use the perfect tense? Like, I will come up with an example when you have asked me to do so.
No, I'm trying to think of a concept. I'm trying to think of a way. Okay, he will have gotten drunk when the train arrives. No, that would express the idea that the train is arriving in the station and suddenly he's drinking. It just doesn't really make sense. The time clause has to express the idea that the action is completed before, I guess, what would be considered the interrupting action. It's got to say that, and when doesn't really do it. Doesn't really cut it. It doesn't really express the idea that this action is already over. In fact, that's why we use it very much with continuous tenses. He was getting drunk when the train arrived. So he was in the middle of getting drunk. He hadn't finished getting drunk. That's why we use it with continuous tenses so often, because we are expressing the idea that that action was not completed. Here in the future perfect, we're trying to express the idea. If you remember, I went on and on about the woman getting her house cleaned before her husband comes home. As I said, she's going to be done. She won't be finishing as her husband gets home. When he gets home, she will be finishing. That's not it. No, she'll be actually completely finished before he gets home. I hope I am not confusing you.
Can you use until?
Until. Okay. Well, all right. Let me bat that around my noggin for a moment. Okay. Let's see. Can we think of a sentence with until? How could we do that? I need an example to think about that. No, we can't. I don't think so. How could you possibly do that? Until. Okay, unless you.
By the time and until is very similar to each other.
Well, let's see. Until I will have decided. The until, I can't imagine how you could use until with a present simple tense, for example. I won't. Okay, maybe. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Hang on. Maybe with a negative. Yes, because until is a negative, right? I won't have made a decision until all right, until next Christmas. Can I do that?
Yeah.
Well, golly. If I use it with a negative, I won't have made a decision until next Christmas. Yeah, that looks good to me. So yeah, Heidi, I would say yes, but you're probably stuck with using the future perfect with a negative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. So affirmative. Okay. All right, Igor, back to you. I didn't make that clear, so let me see here what you got here. So I got an explanation of what I already knew. All right. The real question is this. I will have done this when you have asked. No, that does not work. No. Maybe it makes sense to you. It does not make sense to me. Okay? Is that clear? That does not make... I will have finished doing this when you have asked. No, because when means you're going to be in the act of finishing it exactly as I'm asking it, and that's not how we use future perfect. That action has to be completely done. So when we use when, that means something happens at the same time. All right, I was reading a book when the phone rang. Okay. When he called, it means something happens at the same time, not absolutely done, finished before, in time. So when is just not ever going to work here. However I wrap this around my brain, it won't fit the concept. Okay. Molam, hopefully you wrote that down, because what was your question?
It was something like, by the time I was thinking about using the, okay, I'll give you the example first. By the
Sure.
time I have finished eating my cookies, he will have already made a decision, or made his decision. Yeah.
No, okay, it's okay. All right, let's take a look at this. Actually, I think this may be okay. Dum. All right. By the time, okay, now you're using by the time with this clause. Okay, hang on a second.
Like I am here using the.
I have this is okay. Right. Okay. Instead of all right, I see what you're doing. Instead of a simple present, you're using a present perfect, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
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 By the time I have finished eating my cookies, he will have made future perfect. Yeah. Okay. I can go with this. All right. I can go with present perfect instead of a present simple. I think you can do it either way. By the time I finish eating my cookies, he will have already made a decision. By the time I have finished eating my cookies, he will have already made a decision. I actually see no change in meaning if I decide to use simple present or present perfect. I mean, in context, I can't see any difference there. I think it's perfectly okay. I don't know.
Yeah. Great.
I don't really see any difference there. Maybe slightly more emphasis on the verb with the present perfect. I think that's perfectly okay to do that. I don't have any problem with that. Microsoft Word doesn't have a problem with it. It's not giving me a green line and telling me not to do that. So, yeah, I think that's okay. I think that's a matter of personal choice. Okay? For your freedom of expression. Oh, dear. Alexander. Okay, Alexander, sorry, I was not ignoring you. I wanted to give you a chance to try this. I think you got... sorry about that. If you want to come back, I'll give you another shot at attempting to make a future perfect form. Okay. And frankly, any other viewers out there, it appears I have a number of viewers. Anybody who wants to give this a try, come on in, join the class. There's still time. Okay, another use, which is really kind of the same use. If you think about it, it's just with duration. Okay, duration before something in the future with our non-continuous or mixed verbs or stative verbs, verbs that we are not supposed to ever use with present participle. That is the ing form, the continuous form. There are some verbs in English we just, grammatically speaking, we're completely just not allowed to do that. Okay. So the purpose being that we default back to future perfect because we cannot use continuous. But still we are expressing the idea that the future perfect verb takes time or takes duration. As in the diagram here, then the future perfect would be represented by the green line. Not a one-time action, but an action that takes duration. Again, interrupted by the purple X. Okay. All right, so for example, here, I will have been in London for 6 months by the time I leave. Yeah, okay. You know, another thing, going back to your present perfect thing here, looking at this sentence as an example, by the time I leave, I have the present simple. I think it would be much more likely if you use the time clause first to use the present perfect. By the time I have left, comma, I will have been in London for 6 months. It just seems more likely to me to use it when you're expressing the time clause first. It would seem a little weird by the time I have left. Here, using present perfect would be weird when the time clause is second. It maybe not wrong, just unusual as far as my ear, my English ear, and how I hear sentences. It would sound strange to me. Okay, in any case, here we're using future perfect will have been because we simply cannot say I will be being. That I will be seeing him in September. That's fine. I cannot say I will be being in London for 6 months. That just sounds completely bizarre. We cannot use continuous forms when we're looking at a stative form of a verb, as opposed to dynamic, which is an actual action. A stative form shows the state or how things are and in what state they exist. So you can't being exist. I am being I am being human. Well, of course you are. But you can't say that. I am human. I revert back to just present simple. Okay. The verb to be is called a mixed verb because if we use be to show how you're acting or your actions, then it can be continuous. I am being stupid. I can say that. That's perfectly fine. So that's a mixed verb. Well, okay, here's another mixed verb. By Monday, Susan is going to have had my book for a week. All right, I simply cannot say Susan is going to having my book. That sounds simply atrocious. Yeah, it just cannot be done. To have, as in to possess, cannot be continuous. To have, as in to like I'm having a party, I can do that. I can use continuous form to express the idea that I'm hosting or I'm holding a party. No problem. But before we practice this, okay, although we default to future perfect where we can't use non-continuous or a mixed verb, we have some weird exceptions. These are worth actually memorizing these 4 words right here. Live, work, teach, and study are sometimes used in this way, even though they're not non-continuous verbs. They're used in a perfect tense, not just future perfect. We saw this yesterday in the class about past perfect. We use these verbs. It's speaker or writer's choice. You can use them in a continuous form or in a perfect form. Either way, you are expressing the idea of duration. They are just weird exceptions. All right, so it's perfectly okay to use these in a future perfect, still expressing the idea of duration here. And again, live, work, teach, study. It's worth memorizing these because it'll save you lots of pointless arguments or indecision or referencing grammar to try to figure this out. Why can I do this with this word but I can't do it with that word? Well, these are exceptions. Believe me, you're going to run into this if you continue to study English grammar, you'll run into this a lot. Why do these 4 words act differently? Well, I don't know why, really, because they're exceptions. That's why. In any case, let's give this a shot. Igor, basically using future perfect in the same exact way that we used it before, but with a verb that clearly
I will have been
showing
at
duration.
I will have been at Verblin for 6 months by the end of this month.
Okay. All right. Now, okay. Actually, this allows me to make another point. That very clearly, and it actually clarifies things a lot. If you actually throw in a time clause of duration for 6 months, clearly indicates that this action takes place with duration over the period of 6 months. Not only is this acceptable, it's probably a good idea, just to clarify information. Okay, that's a very good example. Heidi?
I have been living in this condo for 7 years.
Very good. Thank you for using one of the weird exception words. I'll use the short form condo. Okay.
For 7 years by the end of this year.
Yep. All right. And talking about
No, I'll have. At first I said I'll have.
oh yeah. Thank you. You're right. Anyway, I missed that. I just missed it. Okay. I'll have been living in this condo for 7 years. Okay. And this is very common. This is very common when we're expressing. This is actually very common to talk about your job, how long you've been living in a place, how long you've been working there. All right. This entire sentence construction is very common to express that kind of information. Sure, absolutely. Molam.
I will have been
What?
in this class. I will have been in this class for about an hour. By the time it will be over.
Okay. All right. Same idea. Okay. Wait a minute. Not the same idea.
That's what I wanted. By the time it will be over, can we use it like that?
No. No. No, we can't, actually. Okay, by the time it will be over. No, I can't use this construction. Now, this is a good example because this is a very common, it will be over, obviously, is a very common clause in English. The problem is, this is a very common mistake by native speakers, I might add. This is super common, being that this is such a normally used phrase, but I cannot use it. Will be. He will be. I just cannot use this simple future tense here with the time clause. So and how else can you do it? By the time, okay, well, there you go.
By the time it's over.
It is over. Okay, there you go. That's a very common mistake right there. Remember, no future and time clauses. There it is. Okay. You just cannot, in all future forms, you cannot use any future verb tense with an expression or in a clause that begins with. Here's some examples: when, while, before, after, by the time, as soon as. Here's one that eludes many: if. When people make conditional sentences, they often make the mistake of using a future form. If is considered, yes, it is. Maybe it doesn't seem so, but it is considered as a time subordinator, unless. Okay, instead of future perfect, a present perfect form would be used. For example, not correct. I'm going to see a movie when I will have finished my homework. Now, this is a very common mistake. You'll hear native speakers make this mistake, but it's not right. It should be, I'm going to see a movie when I have finished my homework. That would be more correct. Okay. Got to be careful of that, especially if you're doing any kind of formal writing. It's not as noticeable in speaking, in conversational speech, but in writing for native speakers, it is kind of noticeable. For just a quick note about adverbs, especially adverbs that show frequency, only, never, ever, still, just, which we use a lot in these kinds of sentences. If these adverbs of frequency are acting on the verb or modifying the verb, this is where they go. Okay, following the first auxiliary. You will only have learned a few words. Will you only have learned a few words? Okay, you are only going to have learned. All right, here's the place. Here it is in the middle of this. This whole thing is the verb construction with an adverb. Yes, there are times that you can move them around in the sentence, but if you want to make sure you're correct, this is how to do it. This is where they go. Much like using not in a sentence, they're going to follow the first auxiliary. Okay. Just have a few minutes. Let's look at passive now. Okay. Passive forms, because of the two forms. In the passive form, of course, we're concerned with who did the action. Who did it? The subject noun. They. What did they do? What will they do, actually? Will have completed. What did they complete? Or what will they complete? Their project before the deadline. Okay, a future time. Deadline is considered a time clause, by the way. Okay, if we just don't care about they, we don't care who does the project, we just want the project done, we might use a passive form. Many of the more complicated passive forms will not be used. However, future perfect might be useful. We might actually use this. Using passive forms of future perfect continuous or even future continuous is just weird, and we just don't normally do it. Future perfect is a kind of an exception. It may be useful. For example, the project will have been completed. Now the action happens to the project, to the subject noun, in a passive sentence before the deadline. We don't care who's doing the project. We just are concerned with the idea the project is finished. Notice the form. We still have will have. We add the verb to be, the past participle form of the verb to be, and then our main verb. Just sneezed there. Excuse me. Okay, so you can see that this might actually be a useful type of sentence construction. Again, in the in the longer form, the project is going to have been completed before the deadline. Okay. Igor, you want to try a passive?
My English will have been perfect when cows fly.
Will have been perfected. Ed. There it is. Okay.
When cows fly.
Well, again, I can't use when.
By the time cows fly.
Okay.
Cows start flying.
By the time cows fly. Okay. Or start flying. Sure, start is still present tense. Okay. Yes, that would work. But just a reminder, we often talk about when pigs fly. I don't know why English, but when they're being very sarcastic about something's not very likely, we say, sometimes we say when pigs fly. Of course, you can choose any animal you want to. That's perfectly okay. It's a little more idiomatic and standardized to talk about pigs flying. Or another one we use is when monkeys fly out my butt. You can use that one too. Okay. In any case, that will conclude future perfect tense. Oh, great. Okay, froze up there. Okay, that will include future perfect and, in fact, perfect tenses for this week. Next week, we're going to go on just a little spoiler alert. We'll be looking at perfect continuous. Last week, continuous. This week, perfect. Next week, perfect continuous tenses. So I hope you can join me then. In the meantime, thank you very much, and see you again real soon here on Verbling. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.